Hi, I'm Marja Eloheimo. With only 12 minutes to tell this story about Sámi perspectives on green colonialism, I'll dive right in. Climate's a global circulatory system. What happens in one place affects what happens in another because the Earth is enveloped in a dynamic atmosphere that always seeks equilibrium. 3 interconnected atmospheric cells at low, mid, and high latitudes circulate warmer low-pressure air with cooler high-pressure air. In the Arctic polar cell, snow and ice accumulate and due to their reflective albedo effect, serve as an important regulator of solar inputs, playing a critical role in maintaining the global sweet spot that supports liquid water and life as we know it. What's happening in the Arctic is deeply alarming. The region has been warming more than twice as fast as the global average. This phenomenon is known as Arctic amplification. Reduction in reflective snow and ice allows more solar radiation to stay in the atmosphere, warming it overall and affecting atmospheric readjustments worldwide. Climate is a global system. A warming Arctic has local effects as well, such as disruption of ecological systems through invasive species. Eco-cultural systems are disrupted too, especially indigenous practices and lifeways. Many changes have both local and global effects. As a result of the melting permafrost, peatlands in the Siberian tundra have burned catastrophically over the last 2 summers, with temperatures reaching as high as 38 degrees centigrade or over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. These northernmost peatlands sequester over 50% of the Earth's stored carbon. The fires that covered Siberian cities with smoke also released over 59 megatons of carbon dioxide in 2020 alone. Industrialized nation-states have long used the Arctic to extract resources, including fossil fuels. Now, despite the destructive effects of fossil fuel use on the Arctic itself and its indigenous peoples, these states seek to further exploit the region's resources in order to address climate change. While about 1 million indigenous people live throughout the Arctic, this presentation focuses on a region known to the indigenous Sámi people as Sápmi. This is the traditional homeland of the Sámi, who've lived since time immemorial in the northern parts of what are now known as Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Northwest Russia. The Sámi people have endured colonization, racism, and extreme oppression, even eugenics, for many centuries. Sápmi is ecologically diverse, with milder temperatures than similar latitudes in North America due to the Gulf Stream. The region is characterized by taiga and a treeless Arctic tundra that's cold and often very windy. I'll return to this. Sámi people in Fennoscandia likely number between 80 and 100,000. Between 25 and 50,000 speak one or more of 10 Sámi languages, which are Finno-Ugric languages distantly related to Finnish. Traditional clothing known as gakti signifies regional and family connections. Traditional crafts, or dochi, are created from reindeer, tin, silver, wood, and wool. Sámi people have engaged in diverse traditional lifeways and today participate in virtually all mainstream professions. Yet reindeer are central to collective Sámi identity, regardless of whether a person participates directly in reindeer husbandry. Sámi people have always interacted with reindeer, first as hunters of wild reindeer, then through centuries of intensification, largely due to the pressures of colonization. Semi-domestication and herding of reindeer that naturally migrate from summer to winter grazing areas abundant with lichen have shaped community structures as well as Sámi worldview. While technologies have changed over time, the centrality of reindeer has not. Now, let me situate myself in this discussion. I'm Finnish American with the last name Eloheimo that means clan of the harvest or tribe of life. I grew up close to my Finnish American relatives, and when my grandmother insisted that I visit Finland at age 16, I met some of my Finnish cousins for the first time. But it was only a few years ago that I learned from another side of the family that I have Sámi ancestry. There's much more to this story, but alas, I only have 12 minutes. So fast forward to last winter when I taught a program at the Evergreen State College called Climate Change and Colonization in the Arctic, Who Are the Sámi? With the help of Sámi scholar and activist Ellen Marie Jensen, 6 Sámi guests from across Sápmi participated in multiple interviews, which I later edited to create a webinar that was shared publicly on Sámi National Day. In these conversations, I gained a deep awareness of not only the direct effects of a warming climate on the Sámi, but also the devastating effects of what many indigenous people call green colonialism. I'll focus the remainder of this presentation on one type of green colonialism, wind power. There are others. First, however, we must recognize some of the direct impacts of climate change on reindeer. For example, snow now arrives later in fall, and temperatures fluctuate dramatically throughout winter. This fluctuation causes the snow to repeatedly melt and refreeze, becoming, as one Sámi herder put it, like sheet metal. The reindeer then spend enormous amounts of energy trying to reach the lichen. If they don't succeed, they may starve. For example, over 60,000 reindeer died from starvation in 2013 on the Siberian Yamal Peninsula. Most of us think of wind energy as one of the cleanest and greenest alternatives to fossil fuels. Indeed, the Global Wind Energy Council reported that the total global wind power capacity at the end of 2020 was enough to avoid more than 1 billion tons of global CO2 emissions. And to meet emission reduction targets, wind power production will need to triple by 2030. Remember I mentioned windy conditions on the tundra? In the atmospheric polar cell, cold, high winds, approximately 50 to 100 kilometers per hour, can rush south from the North Pole, gusting through the largely treeless tundra. A prime location for wind power, right? Or is it? Ristin Turi Alexanderson is a reindeer herding Sámi who lives near Tromsø, Norway. Ristin and her family care for their reindeer throughout the seasons. She explains that reindeer need low, easily accessible areas for winter grazing land, which is exactly the kind of area preferred for wind projects. In fact, despite Sámi resistance, including Ristin chaining herself to a tractor to try to draw media attention to the issue, a wind project with 68 turbines now occupies much of her reindeer's winter grazing land. As a result, Ristin and her family must give their reindeer additional feed, in this respect, treating them effectively like cattle. Ristin asks with dismay in her voice, how does that change both the nature of the reindeer and the nature of the interaction between reindeers and us human beings? Eva Maria Fellheim's father and ancestors come from the southern part of Sápmi on the Norwegian side. Eva is a PhD student, an activist who's worked in solidarity with the Zapatista movement in Chiapas, Mexico, and as you can see, a journalist. Eva explains that sometimes wind projects facing Sámi resistance are simply issued pre-approval licenses by the government, which effectively allows construction to begin. Recently, one reindeer community on the Norwegian side tried to stop a proposed wind project in court. They lost and also had to pay the equivalent of $250,000 in legal expenses. Then they requested a 1-month pause in construction for the reindeer spring migration, but construction was only shut down for 3 days. This stressed the pregnant female reindeer and caused overall chaos among the herds. Eva also notes that the reindeer are fearful of the spinning wind turbines, as much as 200 meters tall, and sometimes won't get closer than 10 kilometers. With wind projects dotted throughout the region, seasonal migration could become difficult to impossible, and ultimately make it difficult to impossible for many families to keep their herds at all. No wind project exists in isolation. Many other controversial energy projects exist or are planned, and each site requires infrastructure. A major proposal that gained traction in 2017 was a 520-kilometer railway to be part of a major route between Asia and Europe, with a melting Arctic sea lane and across the Norwegian and Finnish sides of Sápmi. It would slice through reindeer herding districts like national borders do already, and also endanger the lives of any nearby reindeer. Sámi resistance to the railway was loud and strong. While the project was nixed in early 2020, though for economic, not ethical reasons, Sámi relief was short-lived. Soon the plan came back to life based on promises of private investment. So the struggles continue. An important victory did come to one Sámi reindeer community on the Swedish side in January 2020 after a 30-year battle and a 10-year court case. to reclaim exclusive rights to manage hunting and fishing on their ancestral lands. In this landmark case, the working principle was that occupancy of land since time immemorial afforded the right to control resource use. It was the first time that the Swedish Supreme Court acknowledged Sámi rights to land use through historical precedent. Importantly, the Supreme Court's decision referred to ILO 169, even though Sweden hasn't ratified it. Even if the Nordic states' motivations are to look good on the world stage, Sweden's nod to ILO 169 may be significant to the many cases in Norwegian courts, since Norway is a signatory to ILO 169. Unfortunately, the success in court did not end centuries of racism. Even death threats and killing of reindeer followed the verdict. Inspired by Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the 3 Sámi parliaments are planning similar commissions in hopes of addressing systemic discrimination. It will be a risky and painful process. In closing, Sámi people are not saying that wind power is inherently bad. They are saying that so-called green solutions, based on the same values that created climate change in the first place, will not provide lasting solutions to climate change. Sámi seek solutions in which they retain sovereignty over their own land, based on their own values, such as Oktavuota, the interconnectedness of all. When asked what we as non-Sámi people can do to support Sámi efforts, a theme that emerges is to educate ourselves and to share the story that green energy production can only be a solution to climate change when and if it does not violate human rights. Lastly, and importantly, the very presence of reindeer and their access to lichen and small plants helps keep areas open for snow cover, which helps maintain the Arctic's precious albedo effect. Sámi and reindeer are themselves protectors against climate change. Ologitu. Thank you.